Hey yo, my name is Big Lou and you're now listening to Go Produce. We're the show that explores how music industry professionals turn their passions into profit. If you want to learn how to build a career around MPCs, then this episode is for you. Okay. Thank you, Factor, for funding part of this initiative. Today's theme is, what are the steps to creating an innovative product that leads to touring the world for over 15 years? Our guest for today is Mr. Fresh Kils. He is one wizard on the MPC. From behind the boards to the stage, there is not a spot of ground Fresh Kils' prolific career hasn't touched. His prowess on the MPC has seen him share the stage with many big-name artists like Nas, Jessie Reyes, as well as the best of the underground, winning over fans and beat battle competitions with his signature ownership. The Toronto-based Sound Battle Royale Champion, Goldie Awards Finalist, with multiple JUNO nominations and high-profile collaborations and performances, still has not reached his ceilings, folks. With momentum and accolades growing each year, Fresh Kils is poised for a sound system takeover unlike we've ever seen before. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Fresh Kils.
Thanks for having me, man. Don't get too excited.
So
Come on.
Ooh, we can't see you. Did you say something?
No, I'm just here. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. I said don't get too excited. You know, just it's a long road, right?
Let's see what we can provide. Thank you so much for being here, though. And I want you to know that we do very much appreciate your time. So let's make the most of this and go produce.
Whee!
Woo! Our first segment today is called The Basics. Okay, so now that we're nice and warmed up, The Basics is designed to get everyone on the same page so that we move through the rest of this episode together. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Kils, what is your first musical memory?
Chantilly Lace by the Big Bopper. It was a record that I demanded. Apparently, I demanded to hear it before I went to bed every night, and my folks would play it for me. And I don't know if you're not going to know that record offhand, but it's a really whimsical, it's almost like he's doing stand-up comedy and talking throughout the whole thing. So it was like a really kind of funny record.
Huh.
And yeah, like I was like literally in a playpen or something. And I remember going to bed to that record.
At that age, eh? And you, by request?
Something. I was requesting records at that point, yeah.
That's peculiar. And
yeah,
when you found the first, so you had that record on spin. What led after that? Was it just, okay, that's the record player and it just plays, or curiosity got you?
A lot of things in between. I don't know. Like, it wasn't really until, like high school, like later on that I got interested in actually, doing it. Like I was requesting records like a drunk girl at a club, you know what I mean? For a long time. I still do that. And I'm actually, ironically, I'm a terrible DJ. Like I can't spin to save my life. But yeah, I don't know. Like I just, I got into stuff later. I definitely, I grew my hair out. I was a long-haired hippie guitar player in high school, and yeah.
That's jokes. Okay. So what is the first lesson that the industry taught you when you did enter it?
Oh man.
Or even before when you're...
No, it was brutal. No. This is terrible. It was terrible. I came in at a really horrible time. The first year was amazing in that when I started, when I came out of school at the Harris Institute, I got a dream internship with K-Cut, who is a legendary producer he was originally in the group The Main Source with Large Professor, who did a lot of records for Nas and other people. And he had produced a lot of records. Like he produced Human Nature by Madonna. He'd produced for tons of people. And so it was a really big honor, but it was a really tough year. And it was like, as exciting as it was, I think, what did it teach me? Definitely taught me like the fear. Like I was gripped with like the fear that kept me on the right kind of, like everyone was trying to get high in the studio and I couldn't do it. Like I just got too nervous. I was like, I need to hold this down. And so there was this like, it was almost like a balancing. It sort of balanced me out because I got thrown into the fire really early. Like my internship was with a platinum selling producer. It was like, whoa, I was in over my head. And so that whole time it's like I was just forced to really like just be as, as professional as I could, despite how green I was,
100% every day.
Yeah.
That is a quick way to start learning.
I came in at a really bad time. I mean, in the early 2000s when I started, MP3 downloading had destroyed the music sales business, essentially. Yeah. 5 majors became 4, Sony, BMG combined. Everyone at BMG lost their jobs. All of a sudden you go from, multiple rap records or, whatever you want to call it, R&B records, rap records, platinum in a year to like there were only 5, then there were only 3, and then the Carter 3 was the only platinum rap record of that year, and then there were none. There were none until Hey Ya, which Hey Ya's not even really a rap record if you think about it, right? And that was right when the industry was trying to catch up, and it was like, can we make singles? Like Apple was like, they were like, how many singles could be considered a record? Because it sold 12 million singles. Well, how many records is that? They were trying to figure it out. So the industry was trying to catch up, but it was a really bad time. If you're only as good as your last hit record, and all of a sudden there are no more hit records, the urban is not a great term, but the urban wing of the Canadian wing of one of the 5 majors, like how much clout do they have? How much budget do they have? What can they do? Like nothing. So
good point. It
was a really, really tough time. And I saw a lot of terrible experiences during that time. And for not just for me, but for a lot of people, it was really, really tough. It was the DIY thing was changing, and it was a real upheaval. So there was a lot of really tough times. When I started, especially.
I am quite the curious individual, and I do want to dive in a little bit further into those tough times. But as I did some research, I did realize that you had those, so I put them a little bit further into the episode.
Sure, but, we'll get to them.
Be aware that we will be touching on
that. They never
again.
leave me. Yes.
Awesome.
I'm haunted.
Everyone that's alive has had one interesting 2020 so far, but we don't want to go too much into COVID. I just want to know, because of that, are there any other firsts that you are pursuing, perhaps?
Firsts?
Yes.
I mean, hilariously enough, I'm probably putting out my first solo record in the new year, and that's been like a cloud over me for a long time. Like I've done so much collaborating, and I'm a collaborator by nature. I'm a producer and engineer, and those aren't those are service industries in a certain way, service roles, and so being the transition to being an artist has always been a tough one for me, and so that's finally starting to happen, and I'm scared of it, and it's definitely like there's growing pains that come along with it, so it's nice when you're in a group, or you can deflect responsibilities, I'm not saying you can slack off, but it's like you're greater than the sum of your parts. There's like, but when it's all on you, it's tough. And not to mention, it's like, being in the studio working on a solo record by yourself, it's not really that fun. It's like, you want to work with people. Like that music is collaboration. It's jamming. It's about combining sounds and people giving and cultures. And it's what it's about. So it's sort of antithetical in some senses for me in a lot of ways. So that'll be a first, and I guess that'll be 2021, I guess. But we're coming to it
today first, but something
we're coming
that you're
to
working towards. Yeah, and I like that you shared that you are a little bit nervous, because despite all of your
petrified
past accolades and experiences,
like
it's okay.
Paralyzed with fear, like absolutely shaken to the core of my being, for real.
That's wild. That's wild. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that, and I'm very keen to see how the launch goes. I will be as much of a part of it, and make sure to let us know.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's cool. It's cool.
I actually don't want you to listen to it.
Nothing to see here. Yeah.
Keep it moving. That's awesome. Perfect. Yeah. You've survived the basics. You feeling good?
Basic training. Yeah, I'm here.
Basic training. Like nothing.
GI kills. Trying to be a Navy SEAL. Let's go. What's next?
What's next? You're not even sweating. Our next segment we got is What's Yo Take? I love this one. I love everyone. in What's Your Take, I'm going to be throwing 3 points that address kind of semi-ridiculous perspectives. And
Okay.
we just want your opinion.
Let's do it.
Beautiful. Watching hip-hop shows are the worst live music to see. What's your take?
I agree, and it's why I do what I do. It's why I got on the MPC, because I was going to these shows and it was like guys were just, it was just a guy would bring a CD and he would just rap over a CD, and I'm like, this is just karaoke. You have to be it's not to say that it's impossible, but you got to be a really incredible performer to be able to pull off a show with just you and backing tracks, especially if there's like lyrics in the backing tracks. Let's not go there. But that's just brutal. And so for me, I wanted to bring something to the live hip hop show that wasn't there. My MPC finger drumming and the live beats thing was a direct response to the fact that hip hop shows to me kind of sucked. And especially if there wasn't a DJ. I mean, at least have a DJ scratching or something. Like, give me something,
Hype man.
Yeah, like at least back in the day, guys would have, if they were lip syncing, at least they would have dancers or something. Like, give me something, And then you go see the Roots, and you're just like, whoa, like this is what it can be,
Right.
So,
yeah. But what about backing tracks for hooks? Is that frowned upon as well?
Well, I don't frown upon anything per se. I don't judge anyone. There's, I've seen people pull off, things, different things. I'm not trying to judge anybody, and I'm definitely, I'm for the kids. The kids are gonna win. I'm with them, like whatever they want to do. But yeah, I mean, there are better ways to go about things. There are ways to achieve. I mean, the medium's the message. The medium's really the message. So it's like, if you're on television and doing a performance, backing track's probably a good idea, right? If you're in an arena and you haven't had a sound check and like the monitoring's really rough and crazy, maybe go with the backing tracks. There are reasons for certain things, and different situations require different solutions. So, like if I'm at a rap show, I want to see you rap, though. You know what I mean? That's just me.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
How would you suggest beginning rappers to improve on this if they can't yet, I don't want to say afford a DJ or a hype man, because you can find friends that do this with you. But how can they develop this showmanship, if you will, before they just do a glorified karaoke?
I think practicing is the key, and really curating your set. I mean, you can show up with a USB stick, and as long as the backing tracks are really well curated, like with breaks, maybe with some funny turnarounds, call and response, just the more prepared you are, you can wow a crowd with really well curated backing tracks. Like we used to do things like, if we were performing a song, we had this whole thing where we would if we were going to hit the second verse, like we'd do the first verse, the hook, and then we would hit the second verse, and we would switch in and put a DJ Premier beat in the same key and tempo, and just smack them out the head, but not skip a beat, like just keep going, and it would just blow people's minds. Like it was just this crazy crowd response thing that worked. Like Ghetto Socks, for example, he would play I Want to Know What Love Is, and he would just pour a bottle of water on his face, and it was like the funniest, craziest thing for him to do on stage. And it's like, there are a lot of ways. It's not just about being able to rap or not. Connecting with an audience, it involves a whole lot of different things. A live guru once told me that you have to risk rejection to make connection with a crowd. So the more you can bare your soul as much as you're comfortable to do, the better off, the more you're going to connect with a crowd. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to rap really well. You could have a really heartfelt song about your mom. Tupac did it, and it was like a crowd pleaser at his shows forever. So yeah, there's a lot of things involved, right? So, and there's a lot of ways to connect with a crowd and have a good show if it's just you and your backing tracks.
Have you found any strategy to be most effective for yourself personally? I find, for example, filming myself or practicing into a mirror to be very beneficial.
Yeah, I definitely think you should try to film yourself. That's helpful. I mean, I'm so nervous on stage. Like even now, like like I've done thousands of shows, but I'm so nervous on stage. The only way that I feel comfortable on stage is if I've practiced like till my fingers bleed, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about practicing songs. I'm talking about like making sure that you're in the same position that you're going to be in when you're on stage. Because there's so many things you can't control at a show, especially when you're on tour, independent tour. You can't control the lighting, you can't control the sound, you can't control the monitoring, you can't control the height of the stage. You can't control anything. So you've got to control all the things that you can control, and that is like if you show up with a USB stick and there's no one to play it, like you've got to be prepared for all these eventualities. So, if I could bring the tough thing for me with the MPC was that I couldn't bring a stand all the time. And that every show was like jury rigging and taping things together to try to get it to the right height. And it was really hard for a long time trying to figure that stuff out because every night was different. But you practice as much as you can. Also, practicing your spiels too, practicing your in between stuff.
That's very important.
Huge, and obviously directing people to the merch table. Like, how many times I've just wanted to kick myself in the ass because I did a whole show, I smashed a show, and I forgot hey, I'm going to the merch table, come hang out.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The reason why you got to practice your spiels in between songs too is especially if the show's good, because if you're in front of a lot of people, that has a way of like mesmerizing you. Like you can be sort of swept away by a crowd in a way. Where if energy's crazy, you're going to get off your game plan. It's going to be really easy to get dissuaded from your game plan.
What's your take on this? You've got a very unique sound, a very unique technique, and therefore a unique product. How did this come about?
Well, the one key thing about it starting was I couldn't afford an MPC for a long time. They were expensive, and I just never had the money for it. And I started to work in studios that had them, and so I had to learn how to use them. And I worked in studios where producers would come in and they would be there for a week and they would just produce beats, and we would have to make sure they had everything they needed. And then, for example, one of my first jobs was like I had to like sync Pro Tools to the MPC to dump the beats. That was my first job, was dumping the beats and arranging and mixing everything. And so I had to learn how to use one, but I never owned one. And then when I finally got one, this is the key thing, is that I didn't need it to make beats. I'd already been making beats like in Logic and Cool Edit and whatever. And so when I got it, I didn't need it to make beats. I wasn't using it to make beats. I was using it to like, I thought of it as an instrument. I thought of it as like, oh, this is like a cool, different way to approach the sound. And I can kind of tap these things out and I can kind of get... And it's a way to achieve different stuff. So, for example, if you were to chop up like a loop or whatever, and you were to point and click, if you were in Fruity Loops and you're pointing and clicking different chops in a 2-bar sequence, versus if you're playing it on the pads, you're going to come up with different patterns, right? The interface is going to influence what comes out. And so I just thought of it like that. I just thought of it as like, this is an interesting way to interface in the music. And it took me a while. I was making garbage beats on the MPC at first when I first got it, because it's like a step back. You're kind of relearning how to get everything that you were used to getting before.
Right.
The results. And so it took a while, but I ended up, it took about a year, started getting into a groove, and then my friend Les and I developed this little drumming technique because I wanted to I wanted to be able to play out the drums. I hated the whole like sequence the hi-hat, sequence the kick, sequence the snare. Like it was just like, oh, like why would I even have these pads? Like what's the point?
Yeah.
So I was sort of developing this little style, and then my buddy More or Less, good friend, I was producing some records for him, and he had a release show coming up, and I said, hey, listen, man, like I'm doing all this weird stuff in the MPC. You want to check it out? You want to try doing something live? And I remember going over to his house, and I had prepared some like cool little things that I could do. And when he saw what was possible, he got really excited, and I was sort of relieved because as an MC, having a backing track on is so much easier. It's so much more insurance against anything screwing up. You know, it's like adding me was a risk, and a risk that and frankly, I totally screwed up shows 100%. I did a bunch of times.
It happens.
Oh man. But the thing about that's interesting is there's a way different reaction if the crowd knows that if you screw up, they know it's real. And what it took me a long time, and we're getting off topic, but what it took a lot longer for me to realize was, because I used to get stepped to, I would get stepped to for faking. Like, people didn't believe that I was doing what I was doing. And it was because I got so obsessed with practicing and making it look good, that it didn't seem real. Like, it didn't seem like I could actually do it. And whatever, I'm not trying to, no,
that's
big
awesome.
myself up.
That's the true art to it. Make it seem seamless.
Right. But the thing is, what I began to realize was it was so important for me to not screw up per se, but do something off to reveal. Like, you got to know, there's something to, you got to see Oz behind the curtain a little bit. It's like, there's a little bit of that you got to realize, because you won't necessarily believe the whole thing.
That's very interesting. People actually gave you beef for faking.
I got headbutted in the face.
Oh,
in
that's
a club.
Not so funny.
In a club by a guy who was really mad that I was, quote unquote faking. Yeah. Wow. I got stepped to, and that was in Portland, Maine. I got stepped to in Green Bay, Wisconsin one night. I came off stage and I had done my Led Zeppelin routine, and I do a little guitar solo where I end up playing the MPC with my face. And all these Jimmy Page licks that I chopped up, and the guy stepped to me and he was like, "You're disrespecting Jimmy Page." And I was like, "Bro, if anything, this is a tribute to him. Like, what are you talking about?" But of course, you're in someone else's town, so you're humble. But there's something to that. So the point I'm making was that was a breakthrough, that show. But Les, who's a good friend who I actually talked to today, he's a dear friend of mine, taking a chance with me to do this thing on stage and to do it with me and allow me to handle things back there, as he was front stage. That was the big turning point. Yeah.
Awesome. He allowed you the room to make mistakes and to grow from it.
Yeah. And and not just that, but ambitious. We got really it wasn't just that he allowed me to do the backing tracks. It was we got nuts. One of the things that we used to do was there was a moment in the set where he would start beatboxing and I would hit this section where his voice would go over top of the beat, and he's beatboxing under his own acapella, and he seamlessly switches from rapping to beatboxing under his acapella to rapping again seamlessly in a show.
Wow. And
it was we pulled that off, and I just remember being this is madness. I don't even know if people know what just happened. Yeah. But man, was it wild to be on stage just doing it, I had to count. I remember I had to count 14 bars. For some reason, it was 14 bars in. Les, why would you do that to me? Counting 14 bars. It's so counterintuitive. And I had to hit the pad on the 14 and switch the sequence. It was such a gnarly switch thing to do. Odd. But anyway, it was fun. It was super fun,
Very cool. What did you change about your set and performance to make it to the big stages?
Well, the really successful musical sets and the routines came out of the battle and the battles that I was in. Hands down, that was, I had developed all the techniques I needed to perform beats live, but when I had to battle other people, that changed the game entirely, because I went into battle mode. And the thing is, when I went into one of my first battles, I didn't know what to do. I was like, what am I supposed to do in a battle? Where am I drawing from here? What's a live beat battle like? There really weren't a whole lot of live beat battles to look at and figure out what to do. And I came up as such a huge turntable fan, turntablist fan. a fan of the DMCs, really good friends with tons of DJs, like from Scratch Bastard to Tilo to Vect. And I started doing, vinyl, essentially doing turntablist battle routines on an MPC. That was, and you could actually, if you look at some of my early routines too, that's what they are. They really are like, like I'm dissing people. Like I'm coming at you. I'm not just playing a really dope beat. I'm narrating it, and I'm animated, and I'm joking around, and I'm calling you out, and and then also the thing was being in front of judges, not just being in front of a crowd, but being in front of, like, Jake One is sitting there with a notepad, like staring at you.
Staring at you. Yeah, yeah.
Like, fuck. Can I swear on this show?
Sure, do whatever you like.
Like, fuck me though. That was like serious pressure. Like, when I did the Goldie Awards, I mean, I don't know if you can imagine this kind of pressure. They fly me to New York. So I make top 8, right? In my submissions, I make top 8. I'm flown to New York. I'm backstage with, like, literally name them. They're there. Like A-Track, Manny Fresh, Just Blaze, Diplo, Dave East. Like, it was just like, it was so crazy.
Come on now.
And you're in front of you have 2 minutes. You're in front of 2,000 people at Brooklyn Steel, and Diplo is sitting right there, and Manny Fresh and Just Blaze, like, they're judging me, and I'm like, the pressure of that situation, like, I'm literally breathless thinking about it. Like, it was really
I mean, that how it felt?
You know what? It was fun, but I would never want to do it again. Like, it was, I didn't sleep for a week, like, literally did not sleep for the 5 days leading up, just killing myself trying to make that thing.
Ready to go, yeah.
The other reason why I'm saying that, in answer to your original question, I'm sorry to babble on, but
that's a fun story. No,
those things really honed me into, like, I've got to, like, how do I blow Jake One's mind? I mean, that's a level of, like, thinking about your set that is different from, how do I get girls dancing, or how do I connect with the crowd, or it's like, how do I blow away one of the best producers in the game's mind? Like, how do I get a 10 from him? How do I do, like, the Vince Carter between the leg? Like, it's over. Like, how do I get that?
Yeah. Amateur thinking versus professional thinking.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing I'll say is thinking about it backwards, like reverse engineering it from, like, what does the person in the crowd want? Like, what are they, not like, I think a lot of people get caught up in, like, ooh, I can finger drum, watch me finger drum, right? As opposed to, setting it up and like, I could finger drum my whole set, but you get bored 2 songs in. You got to set it up. You got to draw people in. You got to, like, how do you get the reaction? How do you narrate it? And it was reverse engineering it from the crowd's perspective and from a judge's perspective that really shifted everything. And that's again, last thing I'll say. I swear to God, I'm up on coffee. You got me on coffee. Is a lot of people, art is giving. Like, the direction of art is this way, not this way, right? And a lot of us get caught up in, like, how do I get people to look at me? It's like, no, it's like the scene from Almost Famous. How do you get that guy off? There's a guy in the crowd that's not getting off. How do you get him off? I find that guy and I make sure he gets off. You know what I mean? Like, that's a different mentality.
Yes,
so it's a switch. It's a switch. Not after the show, during the show, Louis.
Hey, no judgment over here. I like that. We made it very nicely through our What's Yo Take. We've got one more segment tonight. You ready to go?
I am. I'll try to keep it more brief for you.
Hey, we're having a good time. I think it's, by the sounds of it, you're having a good time too.
I'm doing all right. Yeah.
But now, clear the air. All right. We made it to the final segment, clear the air. What we're going to be doing with this. You ready for this?
Oh, so there's only one way to find out.
Okay, here we go. Only one way to find out, yes. So what we're going to do with clear the air is I'm going to throw 3 different topics to you, and I want your opinion so that all of our listeners can really extract education from here. That's the focus of this segment.
Okay.
Cool?
All right.
Ooh. I like to start this segment off with a guest or one of our audience members actually recorded a question for you. So I'm just going to pull it up here and I'll play it.
So out of all your festival appearances and, events where you shared stages with huge artists, I'd love to know which are most memorable.
It's a hands down. There's a hands down one for me. I did a show I started going and doing the festival circuit out west about 6 years ago. And I was fortunate enough to get booked to play Shambhala, which is a really it's always ranked as one of the top 10 festivals in the world. It's absolutely I'm super spoiled because in a way I didn't go to a lot of other festivals before I went to Sham. So going there was just like, oh my God, like this is, I don't know anything else. So, I was blown away. And
I can only imagine. I mean, I've heard fantastic things about that.
I mean, it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life without question. But this one year that I went, so the first year I went, I had a short set, did okay. Second year, I helped some friends of friends get into the artist camp, and we were chilling out, and it was a few girlfriends of a friend of mine, and they were thanking me. They were like, oh, because being in the artist camp is such a great spot because you're close to everything, and you can get wristbands and stuff, blah 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 blah. And they were thanking me, and they were like, if you need anything, let us know if there's anything you need. And as a total joke, like absolutely just I just made it up. I didn't know anything. I just said, well, a choreographed dance routine would be great. I have no idea why I said it. I had no idea that she was a dancer. Turns out she and her other friends are part of this like incredible 4-woman dance crew out of Boise, Idaho called Corvette. And they're like phenomenal. Like they're freaking world class. And they were like, of course, no problem. I'm like, what? Like, come on. And so we're like, okay. So Saturday, I hit the Village stage Saturday, and they spent 2 days working on, I had a Michael Jackson remix that I was going to do, and I had a recording of it, and they worked on a dance routine for 2 days. So I hit the stage, and like the year before I'd done like a couple routines, like I was just a couple little things, but I had a full set for that year. And I went on stage and like completely, I don't know how to describe it, man, like bodied 2,000 people, like bodied them. Like I had 4 dancers. I had a gold chain. I was just, and the thing is too, is like on the, on those speaker systems too, on the PK sound, like you hit a kick drum on that thing and you're just like it's, the power of it is crazy. And being able to, oh man. So absolutely destroyed that stage. And it was to the point where I started noticing that people started coming to my other West Coast shows. Word of mouth had spread about my performance. And it just felt incredible. But then I came off stage and this guy approaches me and he's covered in tattoos and he's like, yo, I've been coming to this festival for like 20 years, man. And like, dude, like you blew my mind. And like, this is the best show I've ever seen. Like, oh my God, like you're on tour. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, like, how much to buy your whole crew for my yacht party next weekend? And this is, the biggest number that I could think of at the time was $5,000. So which is so stupid. So I said 5,000, and he's like, done. And to this day, I wonder what number I could have said to him that he would have accepted. And of course, my crew at the time were like, $5,000, man. Like, okay, cool, but like, kills. See, this is why you have a manager. This is why you have a manager.
That's a good point. Yeah. Lesson learned.
100.
But I mean,
yeah.
It wasn't necessarily a low after the experience at Shambhala because you did get work from it.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about being on the road and building markets, and it's harder and harder these days. And so, like, to see markets build, like, from one show, like, that's what you hope. You hope that you kind of can strategize a good show in front of the right people, whatever that means. and that it'll help build things out. But the funny thing about that whole experience, though, is like there was this doorway to another world that was opening up for me. It was like, do I want to be like a 40-something, sandal wearing, robe wearing, drug addled, just young women all over the place, kind of like, do I want to like emerge from in my 50s and like confused and single and not knowing what the hell happened, and I had to slow it down. I had to stop because I was like, I gotta grow up. These grays are coming in. These grays are coming in nice. So I gotta,
Silver fox.
I gotta earn them. Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever have gray hairs.
What a shame.
Oh. One moment. I do have a question about the Village. You mentioned performing on the Village. I want you to know, or I want to ask, do you think that is the best stage at Shambhala in your eyes?
It's not my favorite, but it is a special place in that, they used to call it Ewok Village because it was built off of the Star Wars, Ewok, Ewok home in the trees,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really special place. I really love the Grove. I feel like I've probably had more religious experiences at the Grove than I have at because the Village stage ends up being like the really hard dubstep and drum and bass on the big nights, and so I can only stand so much of that. I do love it, but it's like Fractal Forest. There's something about that place too that's crazy. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that whole place is so magical. Like everywhere you go, you're wandering around, and there's people like they have a circle of cymbals, and you can sit in the middle, and they like gongs, and they vibrate energy through you just as like a recharge. And you're like, what? Like
that's awesome.
You just line up and do it. You're like, what? Like the place is just so unbelievable. Yeah.
Let's go to somewhere a little bit more bleak. Moving to Toronto, you mentioned, was the worst year of your life, followed by the best year of your life. And we started talking about that earlier, but what specifically was so difficult about that?
Well, when I left Halifax, I'd been running my home studio for about a year, 18 months, and we had a little crew. We were building things. I was recording everything. Like I was recording bluegrass bands and punk bands and reggae groups, and doing like computer game overdubs and hip hop, and so it was a really good time. And I had this really nice studio. I was nice studio, but I had like this little setup, and it was going. And so, but I kind of wanted to I needed to go where the action was, right? So when I left, I kind of uprooted a lot of things, and even amongst some of my closer friends, there was a bit of resentment. So that was hard because they kind of thought I was, deserting them in some sense. So there was that tension. And also, I came to Toronto and I went to the Harris Institute, and I was really excited when I went because I was like, there's going to be all these like-minded individuals. I'm finally going to be at school that I want to be at, like learning stuff I want to learn. I was really excited about that. And the Harris Institute's great, but the people that I was in the classroom with, I didn't really connect. It was like, I don't know. It was like everybody was, there were people that were like, well, I was going to go to law school, but this seemed more fun. There were people getting high every class. And I'm coming out of like essentially almost flunking out of university, like with this last chance to kind of like, I know what I have to do. I've got to nail this. This is what I want to do. So I kind of came in a lot more focused. My friend, my roommate, his father died 2 weeks after moving in, like suddenly and tragically. And it was just like, it was a slog. I was doing Harris Institute, 17 classes a semester. So 17 midterms, 17 final exams. Like it was a shit show, man. Like people were freaking the fuck out. And, I was losing my shit. I was losing my mind. It was really tough. It was a tough year.
Followed by one of your best years?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I got the internship with K-Cut, it was so funny because, a lot of my Halifax friends, not a lot of my Halifax friends, but a few key people who, were like, well, you're going to go to Toronto and you're going to get distracted and you're going to, you're not going to follow through on the things we were building and stuff. Not in a mean way, but just like concerns about it. And when I got out of school, and I was like, listen, guys, let me work. Like, just give me, let me work on this. Like, give me a second here, And then coming out of school and getting an internship with K-Cut, who is like a Canadian legend, that vindicated everything. All of a sudden, everyone was like, holy shit, Kils is on it. And like, there was like a hot minute where I literally, I couldn't pay for breakfast in Halifax. Like, I was what they called Hally famous for like 8 months. Yeah. Where like I could walk into any club I wanted. Like it was really funny. Like Ghetto Socks and I were like, we're kind of royalty for a half second. So because everything shifted, right? Everything shifted right there because it plugged me in, and that year was really, really exciting. And I mean, I got to work with Ali Shaheed Muhammad from Tribe Called Quest. I got to work with Ringo from Ringo, who produced Busta Rhymes' Woo-Ha and Erykah Badu's first record. And I was in the studio, like I was in the studio with Doc McKinney, who's went on to The Weeknd and other everything, and he's a genius. And that was the point. I wanted to go where the action was. It's like, I love Halifax, but it's like, if you're serious about doing something that you want to do, I mean, I probably should have gone to New York at some point or whatever. Like, you go where the best are doing it and you cut your teeth. That's what you have to do in life.
You want to be the best,
yeah, you want to be the best. Yeah. Now, I didn't want to be the best engineer and the best producer, but I knew Toronto was a better place to be for what I wanted to do, and it clearly was.
Yeah, right decision. Yeah. Sacrifice, but the right decision. Are you still ever in touch with K-Cut? Is he a mentor to you today?
Yeah, actually, awesome. he came by a couple months ago because one of the things was, when I was interning for him, he didn't have a lot of money to pay me, and so I was interning, and I was really hand to mouth for a while. And so he would try to help me out. And one of the things he would do is he would let me take records home, because he has an insane record collection. So he would let me take records home and sample them. That was kind of like one of the things. He'd be like, yeah, no problem. And when I left that studio, I ended up with some of his records still, and I had them for so long, and he actually came by to pick them up a couple months ago. So it was nice. Good, Yeah.
I like when the relationships like that can flourish over time. It's very cool.
For sure.
But now that you're mentioning sampling, can you clear the air on sampling as an art form, as it may not always be seen that way?
Yeah, I mean, sampling is collage. Sampling is
that's a very cool way to put it.
Sampling is, I mean, if you read political science, or you read philosophy, or you read novels, they're well, especially if you read political science or philosophy, they're mixing and matching different points of view, and it's you're pulling influences from everyone. I mean, okay, like Led Zeppelin wasn't sampling Willie Dixon, but like they sure as hell interpolated a lot of his stuff, like, so what is sampling is a big deal. Why? Because it's like, it's wholesale, and it's just a big deal because the technology makes it so wholesale, right? The technology makes the totality of the lift too real, but it's no less real. It's no less of a lift than, the idea that we're standing on the shoulders of giants of the past. I mean, that's how culture works. That's how art moves forward. That's how science works, so,
build on what is, or what was.
Yeah. And there's that, but there's also like, sampling, in a lot of ways, like, for example, a DJ is a curator, right? A DJ curates a set. And a producer, you're curating the same way. I mean, you're curating sounds from other places, whether you're making them or not. You're pulling things from other places together, and it's an incredibly deep creative well to pull from. Yeah, I mean, I can't demonstrate it, but I firmly believe that. I've been doing it for years. I actually got asked to go to Osgood Hall, which is the law school here in Toronto, and they wanted me to do a presentation on sampling, and I was like, that's like going in the lion's den, I was like, these motherfuckers are they're on the come up, man. They're looking for like a cover story lawsuit that they can write. No, but
details that they can get you on.
Yeah, I mean, and that's me making a joke about like, like would I hold my, if I would I put my feet to the fire with what I'm saying, and I absolutely would. So yeah, I believe it's an art form. It is what it is, and yeah. You're not gonna convince me otherwise.
Oh, I cut you off.
No.
How does copyright or royalties work when you sample?
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on so many things. I mean, they generally don't work. So for example, I mean, nobody would care. Like, there would not be sampling laws that anyone would give a shit about if there wasn't money to be made. So, you know, how do they work? Well, they work in order to leverage legislation into making money for people. Now it's on the one hand. On the other hand, it works in that the original owner of the intellectual property is paid for the use of their intellectual property in something else, which makes sense. I mean, how does it work? You know, people used to ask me, how long is the sound? You know, is there, like, if it's less than 2 seconds, is it okay? It's like, no. It's like a noise complaint. If they notice it and it bothers them, then you got to stop, right? But otherwise, you don't. So,
okay. I guess to give you a little bit more clarification, perhaps once the song gets big enough, how does the payout then get worked out?
Well, it depends on whether you've cleared the sample before or not. If you've cleared the sample before, you know, when you clear a sample, you pay a royalty, or you give up, for example, you give up part of the intellectual property percentages. The thing is, if you are caught, if you put out a record, if you're caught with your hand in the cookie jar, they can cut your hand off if they want. Case in point, my personal experience with it was with Decisive, who arguably came to me to produce his Juno-nominated record Vaudeville, ostensibly because he had been sued for the previous record for copyright infringement, and he needed somebody that could make hip-hop records without sampling, and I was one of those people. But what happened to him was, you know, he made this record. The song in particular was called Nobody with a Notepad, and it sampled like 16 full bars of Lamont Dozier's I don't know, it's something like Notepad. There's notepads in the title. I can't remember the song name. But I mean, it was wholesale. It was just like literally sampling 16 full bars and putting drums on it and rhyming on it. Now, the thing to note about this was he wasn't sued for putting the record out. He wasn't sued for performing it. He wasn't sued for putting the video out. He wasn't sued for the Juno nomination for it. He got caught. He got a copyright cease and desist because he entered a SoCan songwriting award contest with a song that he didn't really write, if we're thinking about it right correctly.
Yeah.
So this gets back to what I was talking about before with the medium's the message. It's like, you want to put out a record, do it, sample, fine. But if you're licensing it for film and television, probably not a good idea to sample records in certain situations. So again, it's really dumb of him and them to like submit a song that has a huge sample in it to SoCan, for Christ's sake. And they won a $5,000 SoCan songwriting award.
That's funny.
Huge red flags all over that play. And so, yeah, they got a cease and desist order. Now, here's the crazy thing. It's one song on the record, right?
Yeah.
So initially what happens is they say, okay, well, you've got to pull that song from all the digital services. Okay, easy enough. You've got to pull, because it's in all your hard copies as well, you've got to recall all your hard copies and destroy each one of them. And you've got to prove that you've done it. So, you want me to film myself burning hundreds of copies of my album and sending you a video of it to prove that I've destroyed the actual, the actual
evidence.
Merchandise? So that's crazy.
That is bizarre.
It gets more bizarre because then they say, if it's a single, well, what's the purpose of a single? The purpose of a single is to sell the record. So they say, well, you used our song to sell your record, so we want all the money you made from the record because you used our song to sell your whole record. Yeah. Then it gets,
not cutting off his hand, they're cutting off his arm.
Well, they take everything, but it gets worse. The last thing they do, and this is the one that's just like the lawyer, Now my father's a lawyer, so whatever. But like
This is how they get their bonus.
the fucking conceptual gymnastics they do here. They say Lamont Dozier is an artist whose catalog is worth millions of dollars, and his association with your album has demeaned and devalued our brand, and therefore demeaned the value of a multi-million-dollar catalog of intellectual property. To the tune of make up a number, just add digits, like just add zeros, like they can fuck. It's like emotional distress. Oh, you owe me $40 million. It's like you make up a number,
Bro,
and it's bad. It's really bad.
that's terrifying.
It's terrifying. So it's not a road that you want to go down,
Yeah.
but it's a road that
Yeah.
you can avoid if you are
Yeah.
smart and
Be strategic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. I want to touch on touring a little bit before we wrap things up. When touring, why do you think you were able to play in the locations that you did? Does that make sense?
Sure. Well, I mean, my touring. So at one point I was on average 150 shows a year for 6-7 years.
5-6 years, yeah.
And that was Canada, the States, and Europe predominantly. And of course, I've been asked over the years, like, why didn't you go to Asia? Why didn't you go to Australia? And the answer to that question is always, book me, motherfucker. Like, like you have a friend in Japan that's like, why don't you ever come to Japan? I'm like, bro,
Let's
why don't
go.
you fucking book me, bro? Like, what is this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not just gonna fly to Japan, man. Anyway, it's funny, but and I've been offered. I was offered a tour in Asia a couple years ago, and I was like, just the numbers. I was like, no, man, like, and listen, look, like you do a show in Vietnam somewhere, you can't sell a shirt in a smaller city in Vietnam for $25 American because they don't make $25 American a week. So. It's like it's difficult to make some of those things work, and that's not, again, it's not a judgment or a knock or anything. It's just like you're in different worlds. It's harder to go those places, and plus, anytime you go to a new market, it's tougher. It's an uphill battle. So you need legwork and marketing, and you need to target these places, right? And so for me, I'm looking at my analytics and I'm going, okay, the States, Europe, those are just naturals. English speaking areas of the world, just generally. Although I've been really lucky because of the instrumental stuff. I think another thing, Europe is really into true school stuff. There, like there's a lot of legacy hip hop acts that can still go there and pack venues and that they can't do in the States.
Yeah.
So, definitely Europe is into what I do and the artists that I would roll with. But I gotta say, like, I've been off the road. I committed to being off the road after last summer because a lot of the bookings in the States it was getting harder. Like the West Coast run we did it was 3 years ago now, but it was tough, man. It was tough to book. It wasn't very successful. It was like, and when things start to get harder, like things are supposed to get easier, the more you do them. And when things start to get harder, it's like, okay, I'm either doing something wrong here, or this well is dry, or I don't know what it is, but yeah. So but I've been lucky, and I've been really lucky being able to tour those places and being asked back and to see markets build and things like that.
Interesting. I know obviously people aren't touring very much today, but someone might listen to this in the future. And what are any tips that you may have for young artists that are starting the tour life? Because oftentimes people go crazy doing it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that, generally speaking, the music business it's entertainment business is smoke and mirrors, right? And so there's this kind of duality between the myth and the reality, and you're trying to build up the smoke and mirrors so that you can translate it into real stuff. Like, like for example, I go to one of my first tours in the States with Ghetto Sox. We drove 8 hours to Chicago to play in front of 3 people at 5:30 in the afternoon. It was ridiculous. And, Ghetto Sox had done this like Facebook poster of us. It looked great. And it's like, the show was terrible. It was awful. We lost money. I was like awful. I felt terrible. It was brutal. And then we get home and everyone's like, yo, you played Chicago, bro. That's crazy, man. Like, yo, you were in Brooklyn. And I'm like, oh, I see. So now I charge more in my studio rates, you know? So you're always levying the myth to kind of create the reality. Now, the thing to remember is, this is the crucial part, is that the further disparate those things are, the more difficult it is to maintain mentally, physically, financially, everything. So you've got to try to keep them as close as you can. And that means if you're going to blow something up, if you're going to make it look like you're doing some crazy stuff, you better know how to flip it into real stuff, you know?
Right.
Because we can curate our Instagram feeds all we want, but if you get booked at a show and 10 people show up and it's a wash, you know, you're going to get exposed real quick. You know, if you're getting all your likes from Russian bots, it's not going to, you know what I mean? Like, that's not going to work. You know, you're going to mess up your analytics anyway. So you've really got to keep those things as close together, but, you know, bolster one, but keep them tethered, because if you don't, you'll fall through the cracks. And I've seen it happen in brutal ways. Yeah, it's bad.
And it happens. Yep, I agree.
I've seen it happen, man. It's you know, like holding I was holding a tour mate. Like, we're in Vienna and I'm holding him and he's weeping uncontrollably, and I'm holding him and I'm like, he's falling apart, and I'm like, I don't know what to do for him. It was heartbreaking, man. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. But on that note, I think it's a fantastic way to end. Do you have any final words, Fresh Kils?
Nah, well, follow me on Instagram and Twitter and everything else at Fresh Kils, FreshKils. Freshkils.com, coming very soon. Keep your eyes peeled for that.
Beautiful.
The solo record's coming. I just thank you guys for having me, man. I appreciate it. And the show's great, and you guys are doing a great job. And you know, grumpy sound guy crew for life, son.
Hey. That's hilarious. Thank you so much for those kind words. I want to give our listeners a very nice shout out. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's always a pleasure having you join us. Shout out to Prevail Music Group. The studio is beautiful. Every time I'm here, I enjoy myself so much. The staff is also very welcoming. Shout out to the Grumpy Sound Guy. You did your best today. I can't ask for any more than that. And then, of course, most definitely, thank you so much for your time, your energy. Fresh Kils, we out. Thank you for listening. If you found any value in this episode and you want to learn more from our content, check out our website at goproduce.ca. If you're on Instagram, check out our handle at go.produce. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, hit download. If you're on Apple Music, leave a review. This will all help us grow our community. I'm Big Lou, and this is Go Produce.